I want to talk about Vols double digits to go 10-2. That might surprise you a little bit. A double-digit favorites against all opponents except for Georgia and Alabama. But I think the Alabama number might actually surprise you the most.
What the? What was he thinking? Release the hounds. The day.
I hit like 13 buttons. Let's talk about Tennessee and potential point spreads out there, and one that's going to shock you. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking? Release the hounds. The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Okay, you can read about it on OffTheHookSports.com by a good friend of mine who is incredible in gambling circles. And you're going to have to take my word for it from the get. But I will go ahead and tell you that he's tied in with the biggest bookmakers in the nation. And he is a bookmaker himself in that he provides a purely analytical view at each game. He does factor in home and away, so we don't have to get caught up on that. That's a factor. But let's go ahead and dive into this. And that is the fact that Tennessee will be a double-digit favorite in every game they play, except for, of course, Alabama and Georgia. Does that surprise you whatsoever?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I would have thought that when the season started, too.
I agree. Okay, so Tennessee looks like a lock to go 10-2 at the very worst, given that they'll be double-digit favorites. Now, Alabama, who the Vols play at home, would be a 1.5-point favorite if the Vols and Crimson Tide played Saturday. Does that number surprise you?
It does kind of shock me. I actually thought Tennessee would be favored by this point against Alabama.
Oh, okay. I thought you'd go the other way.
No.
I would have thought Alabama favored by 3 or 4.
No, I wouldn't have thought Alabama favored by 3 or 4. I thought Tennessee would get quite a few points for just being at home. And we know what Neyland Stadium is going to look like when that game happens. Dave, I'll just say it. I think it could be wilder than it was 2 years ago. And the other reason, you believe highly in Jalen Milroe, but what have we always said about football, Dave? Defense travels way better than offense. And
it's true.
How we still don't know how Jalen Milroe could handle everything he handled on Saturday against Georgia. How would he do that on the road against the Neyland Stadium crowd? I'm not so sure he can handle that. And so I'm much higher on. I'm shocked Tennessee's not favored right now. I would take that bet, guys, right now. Do it. Put some money on it.
Okay. Now, going back to the story, does it surprise you at all that if Tennessee and Georgia played on Saturday, that Tennessee, this is being Athens, who they were considered a 17-point underdog in May. So they put out some of the numbers for the big games because they want you to jump on board, and there's like a maximum bet you can make. So like Caleb and I would both have a lot of money if we got 17 points and the Vols, because I don't think it's 17 is realistic unless something insano happens, which could. But now Georgia is a 6-point favorite over Tennessee if the two met on Saturday. What do you make of that number?
See, I think that's too low. And this goes back to our old like, this is what I'm telling you. I think Georgia's significantly harder for Tennessee than Alabama. And I think Vegas, I can't believe I'm saying this. Vegas usually doesn't get fooled by the inner workings of 1 week. I think they're overreacting to 1 week.
Well, no, this is not Vegas. I mean, these numbers aren't out. These are analytical numbers that he plugs in. This is not at all. I mean, I'll give you an example. He's a fan of one SEC team, but he'll bet against them in a heartbeat if his number is if his prediction compared to the line is better. Does that make sense?
Okay, that's fair. I don't know how. I feel like the analytics are overreacting. I think Georgia should be a much bigger favorite. Even after watching that game, I think that Georgia is a better chance to limit what Tennessee can do offensively, and just the game being in Athens is going to favor them. I think the home crowd means a lot right now with many of these elite teams in the SEC. You give more. I don't get this because Vegas gives, and I know you're saying analytics, but part of the analytics is however many points you get for home and away. What they're saying is that Alabama would be a 4-point favorite over Tennessee on a neutral site, and that Georgia would be a 3-point favorite over Tennessee on a neutral site, assuming you give 3 points for home and away. And by the way,
But he does.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't think that's crazy at all. I mean, how do you think that's crazy? I mean, if that game were this week, if that game were Saturday, I mean, it's hard I don't understand how you possibly think that Tennessee would be favored at Neyland Stadium, given their potential tackle situation, given the fact that Jalen Milroe might be an incredible generational talent that can play in any system. I don't see it like that. I think Tennessee would be actually, I was surprised to see Tennessee would just be a 1.5-point underdog based on analytics. I would have guessed 4.
You're going to find me crazy. This is crazy, Caleb talking, but I'm going to go here. Jalen Milroe is going to look relatively pedestrian at Neyland Stadium. I'm just going to say this. Guys, as a starter, Jalen Milroe has not yet faced a ranked team on the road. Hasn't done it. And what did he do just recently? I mean, we're not talking about like last year. We're talking about 3 weeks ago. South Florida, he needed the fourth quarter to pull away. Yeah, he did face Wisconsin on the road, and Wisconsin's a good football team, but that was big noon kickoff, and this Wisconsin team is not like your old school Wisconsin teams, and they're even slower than usual. So I'm sorry. I don't think Jalen Milroe last year, Alabama almost lost to Auburn on the road in the Iron Bowl with that raucous crowd. Auburn just got blown out by New Mexico State the week before. This Auburn program is not good under Hugh Freeze. They almost lost to Auburn. Dave, I'm sorry. I still don't think Jalen Milroe is ready for a hostile road environment against a ranked team. And I think Tennessee is going to give him hell for that.
Okay. Is Tennessee ready for an elite quarterback? Because they have not played one to this point.
Is Tennessee ready for an elite quarterback? You could argue Jackson Arnold was elite, but maybe not.
Oh,
I mean, they ran off Dylan Gabriel for Jackson Arnold, and
Jackson Arnold got ran out of the game, and I think they probably were running him off for Hawkins now in retrospect.
Possibly. I think Tennessee's ready for an elite quarterback. I think it's debatable if Milroe's elite. Still, guys, Alabama was up 28-0 in that game and almost lost. Are we forgetting that? I mean, again, Georgia. Yes, they had a great first half. It was 28-0. Georgia took the lead in the fourth quarter. We're talking about this like Jalen Milroe didn't almost have one of the most epic choke jobs in college football history. If Ryan Williams doesn't make an amazing play on the ball coming back, Dave, a 17-year-old to his credit, what are we talking about today? Are we not talking about how Jalen Milroe choked and couldn't put the game away in the second half?
Okay, fair. I think that was. I'm surprised that you think that the analytics from our friend Tyler White would have, if the game were this Saturday, would have Tennessee as a 1.5-point underdog. I actually think that meant a lot of respect to the Vols and shows analytically, well, not respect, because respect is when you start talking about odds makers, but we're an all analytics guy that gets programmed into this algorithm and spits this number out. So I think it's a sign that Tennessee's accomplished more to this point in the season, playing basically two teams that were trash, two teams that didn't have a quarterback at the time. And I actually read this as a very positive sign.